isn't it possible the flood wasn't caused by global warming? I mean, the water was held back by a giant beaver dam after all.
No, Stan, I'm afraid us adults just let you children down. We didn't take care of our Earth, and now you've inherited our problems.
We didn't listen!
We didn't listen!
South Park poking fun at the global warming hysteria. And global warming is tonight's top story. A new report comes from the White House says climate change started here across the continent and it's man-made. A national climate assessment released this week in Washington says decades of dangerous weather are on the way. The White House says this report, compiled by 300 scientists over 4 years, proves the threat of climate change is real. Well, Mark Morano joins us now out of Washington. And Mark, this is a story that, to me, I was saying this to Bob Parks yesterday, to me this is a distraction from other political problems that the White House has. Did they move up or play with the timing of the release of this report?
Yeah, well, before we even get into the science, you're absolutely right. First of all, the report was slated for April. Now, given that we've had a record cold winter and snow and going into even through April, there's been speculation and rumors that they delayed the report till it started getting warm. And this was like the first real hot week we've had here in Washington, D.C. And, of course, they love theatrics. So that could have been one factor. But you're absolutely right. The political background of this is President Obama has been stifled by Congress, the GOP Congress now. He's facing a midterm election where Democrats are fleeing from him. He's got no domestic agenda. He's trying to play around with some foreign policy stuff, but his Secretary of State, John Kerry, keeps putting his foot in his mouth and causing major distraction. So what President Obama has left are executive orders on global warming. And so this is where he's going to have fun. He's going to use this report now as a basis to start acting and shutting down American coal plants, preventing new ones from coming online. They've already announced an intention to go after fracking. They're still delaying the long-delayed Keystone Pipeline. And they can all do it now because they have cover, and Obama can now act to do something about global warming through executive order. He doesn't need no stinking Congress, as it were.
All right. You said get to the science. I'm not going to call it science. I won't be as generous as you. But I want to read, I want to juxtapose. We'll just get to a couple of these, some of the claims in the new report. And I'm going to juxtapose it to the IPCC. So the new report says the frequency and intensity of some extreme weather events are increasing. The UN panel on climate change says current data sets indicate no significant observed trends in global tropical cyclone frequency over the past century. No robust trend in annual numbers of tropical storms, hurricanes, and major hurricane counts have been identified over the past 100 years in the North American basin. One more thing. The climate assessment says in Arctic Alaska, the summer sea ice that once protected the coast has receded, but the sea ice is actually expanding. It's expanding. So what's to do here? I mean, they're being contradicted by people they look up to.
Yes, this report couldn't even let the UN, which has been accused of alarmism, and many scientists have now turned. One of them, Leonard Bengstad, just came out and now has joined the skeptic camp. And others, like Richard Toll, have resigned from the organization, and still others, like Harvard professor recently, said he was in a room where there were almost 50 government delegates and bureaucrats and only 2 scientists. We now know where they get the 97%. But Obama's report wasn't content to even accept the UN. They had to go further and try to claim that essentially global warming is here and now. And in doing so, they really had to twist science on its head. You know, they ridiculed Sarah Palin, the former vice presidential candidate here, for saying she could, for implying she could see Russia from her house or from Alaska. Well, now they say you can see global warming from your backyard or out your window. It's bastardizing science. Because on every major extreme weather event, hurricanes, tornadoes, floods, droughts, there's either no trend on 50 to 100 year time scales, 50 to 100 years, or there's declining trends. So they can't make this happen. But they've basically said every storm now is proof of global warming, and we must act now, as though acts of Congress or our EPA or the United Nations can stop storms.
And yet when you and I point out that it was a really cold winter, oh no, you can't go by just one. It's got to be 100 years. Here's another thing the climate assessment claims. They say the sea level. The sea level is rising.
Yes.
It's right in the report, but then oceanographer and marine geologist Bob Carter says no justification exists for continue to base sea level policy and coastal management regulation upon outcomes of deterministic and semi-empirical sea level modeling. Is there, final question, 30 seconds left, any science behind this, or is this all activists?
Well, first of all, on sea level, they're predicting up to more than 6.5 feet over the next century. I think that's 11 times the natural rate over the last 2 centuries, and there's actually been recent peer-reviewed studies showing a deceleration in sea level rise. No, the bottom line here is this is a political report, predetermined science. They selected lead authors from Nature Conservancy, from the Union of Concerned Scientists, from other environmental groups. They picked other scientists like Katherine Hayhoe and Don Wobels, people who they knew what they were going to write before the report was written. It was ramped up, contorted, and Obama's science advisor. This is a political report meant to give cover for a political agenda, which they're now pursuing.
All right, Mark, thanks so much for joining us. We'll chat soon.